the best out of the current situation, we have professionals from all over North America who will come in and discuss their knowledge, experience in the marketing industry. Just some housekeeping rules. Please remain muted throughout the presentation. We will have a Q&A at the end of the session. So if you want to ask any question, you can use the chat or you can keep them in mind for later in the presentation. So without further ado, Jeremy, I'll hand the panel over to you.
Fantastic. So I am the moderator today. My name is Jeremy Roberts, based out of San Antonio, Texas. So I currently am a strategic value advisor at Adobe, working remotely. I am also an adjunct professor of marketing at Texas A&M, teaching digital marketing in the graduate school. I'm an owner of a small consulting business, but we happen to have one big client, which I'm proud of, which happens to be the city of San Antonio. And the other thing is that I'm currently in school, so I know we have a lot of students joining, but I'm also currently a student in school earning my doctorate in business administration. So I will be your moderator today, and let me actually go through the list, and I'll first start with Adrian Pike. And Adrian, would you like to give us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, certainly. So I'm Adrian. I'm a CEO of a company called Actual Conversions. We're a business intelligence technology company. I'm based out of Montreal now. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm British. So I moved over here about 7 years ago to head up marketing for a company called Lightspeed, which was a big company, or is a big company in Montreal. And Jeff, I know you know those guys. And so yeah, I actually started up Actual Conversions 2 years ago because I saw there was a big need for business intelligence for small, medium-sized businesses, and it's kind of been a passion of mine for decades of really understanding how data and marketing can actually add value to a business. So it's kind of one of my passions, which is why I'm excited to be on this panel tonight.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adrian. Pablo Stevenson, go for it.
Yeah. How you doing, guys? Very glad to be here with you. Quick glimpse on my background. So I'm the CEO and founder of an agency, a digital agency called Resac. We've been in business for the last 15 years. Offices in Montreal. We also have a satellite office in Toronto. Our specialty, it's mainly performance in media. So basically clients come to us with media dollars, and we invest them in different networks, marketing networks to generate leads, conversions, and also awareness. I'm also the founder of a spin-off that we created like 2 years ago that is now VC funded. It's called Soko.ai. Basically, it's an add-on to everything that you can do on Facebook and Google to enhance the audience quality while working as a partner with different publishers in the world. So that's about it. And we also launched another startup recently during the COVID, which is again an accelerator for a lot of businesses that aims to reinvent collective insurance and employee benefits across Canada for SMBs. So it's called Teddy.app. So really, again, glad to be here.
Thank you. Jeff, you're up.
Thanks for having me. I'm Jeff. I'm right here in New York City, so I think far away from a lot of you guys. I am an operating partner at L Catterton, which is the world's largest consumer-focused private equity firm. We invest in middle market consumer companies, and my role as a partner on the operating side is to work with our deal teams to evaluate potential acquisitions and then to create value creation plans and ensure that when we buy a company, it performs to our expectations. Before becoming a private equity guy, I was chief marketing officer of Shopify. Before that, I was chief marketing officer of Shutterstock, which is a stock assets company offering photography, video, and music. Previous to that, I spent 6 years at a company called Beachbody. They make health and wellness products, including P90X, Insanity, Shakeology, and others. And I guess the interest for me in this topic is that my career was really in analytics. And as all the media dollars started moving into trackable digital formats, marketers started knocking on my door more and more, asking for quant help. And over time, I went from helping the marketers to leading one marketing team to leading several marketing teams to becoming a CMO. But it's a way of saying that marketers no longer have to come from the creative side of the house.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jan?
So I am in Toronto. I'm the founder and president of Environics Analytics, which is we have some business in the US, but I'll focus on what we do in Canada. We're the leading provider of third-party data to the marketing community in Canada. We produce on an annual basis. I founded the business in 2003. It was just me. Now have 250 employees. And we produce on an annual basis 30,000 variables for each one of the 750,000 residential postal codes in Canada. All the data are privacy compliant. And we embed that data in a platform that encompasses about 1,000 workflows and reports that help businesses solve problems using data. The products are not geared to the data scientist per se. They're geared to someone who's going to run a program, run a campaign, and actually go and use data and analytics to help make their business more successful. I'm really passionate about data-driven decision-making. I also, prior to founding this business, I ran the largest business in Canada called CompuSearch, which is probably before everyone on the call was born, which was the main demographic lifestyle segmentation media database provider for Canada. And prior to that, I had a career in the statistics world in government. And I think the biggest and the most exciting thing for my journey right now is that we've taken some of these old-fashioned tools around geolocation and demographics, combined them with big data from mobile phone tracking systems and other privacy compliant data. So we can take a look on a Monday morning at the phones, but not just the phones. We've modeled the phones to represent the consumer marketplace, so we can talk about which lifestyle groups, which demographics, which income and net worth brackets are leaving their homes during COVID, what kind of behaviors have changed. So kind of mashing up old world traditional targeting data with what we need to do with new big data, and then helping solve the last 10% of the problem, which is making sure that the insights that people are using when they're developing their marketing strategies can actually be put in action. There's a kind of a disconnect between a lot of the data that people have about their customers offline, and how do we make that actionable online? So the biggest challenge in marketing and tech and understanding data-driven decision-making is being sure that we can activate in a precise way, particularly in a climate like Canada, where the privacy laws have been sort of like the GDPR since 1998. So privacy compliant, data-driven decision-making. We work for all the banks, insurance companies, retailers, but also a number of government departments, and really a lot of small organizations as well, because part of the name of the game is to enable businesses to make decisions. So the other thing I would just say is it's great to talk to a whole bunch of people who are passionate about data and make their career one way or another in enabling business. As we think about recovering from the pandemic, both in Canada and the United States and the rest of the world, I feel very passionate that, it's our time to really use data to help people make smart decisions and know how to use the information that's available to, emerge from this in a stronger way than we otherwise would.
I completely agree. So let me do this. Let me start with our first question, and let's go, Pablo. Let's put you on the spot for the first question here. So let's talk about your journey. Let's talk about your journey from, university starting to where you are today. Just tell us about, bumps in the road. How did you get there? What things did you uncover? Were there any aha moments that said, this is how I'm going to figure out my path?
Yeah, well, I started, I was, since the beginning, since I was a kid, I've always been interested in technology, so computers and stuff like that. So I'm the kind of guy that when you call him, his line was always busy, because I was connected with an old school modem that used to work. Old schoolers know what I'm talking about. And so I created my first website just to test things, out of curiosity, basically. And then when I grew up and I was finding my way, in the business and everything, I was really interested by video games. So I went to study in video games design and development. That's why I started. I went to the school that is in Montreal called NAD Center, which is mainly the most important school for video games in Canada. And it was really important because it was the same time that the Quebec government created the grant for the video game industry. So video game studios were popping everywhere, basically. So I applied to different video game studios afterwards, and I had two options: one to go to Ubisoft or to Loto-Québec. So Loto-Québec, most people didn't know that they were creating games, but actually there was a trend in 2005-ish where there's a lot of video games with CDs. So you buy a CD, you buy a code, and then you start playing basically, and you can win money. So it was a new concept created by Loto-Québec at that time. So I had two options: one to go to Ubisoft and start a real career in the video game industry, and the other one on Loto-Québec, which was paying honestly 3 times more than Ubisoft, but I knew it was going to be temporary. So I chose the money over the passion.
Okay.
And I think at the end, it was a good choice.
Okay.
It was a good choice because I stayed there for maybe 8 months, and I was just banking money. And then at the end of the contract, I said to me, do I want to pursue a career in video games, or do I want to do something else? And I started to create an agency, basically. It's how it started. So I found out a friend that was working in a large agency that still exists in Montreal. He came up with a business plan of that agency that was provided to him by one of the owners of that agency. And I started reading the business plan, and I was like, hey, this is amazing. It's really cool. The way it's presented, the vision and everything. I want to do something similar, but adapted to my vision. So I locked myself up in my place for 3 months, eating on pizzas and chicken nuggets and stuff like that. And I came up with a business plan. And the business plan I submitted to an organization called Sage Montréal that was giving grants for people to start businesses. They gave me 12K, if I remember. And that's it. I started from there. And the company grew to 1 person, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20, 30 now. And that's my journey, basically. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I really like the marketing aspect, the technology, the communication, and combining all those aspects to create a business. And that's where I ended up, basically.
Very cool. Thank you. Let's actually jump over to Adrian. And I know your path might be a little bit different, so I'm going to ask you this question. You might be laughing already, but so when you're in university, right? From university all the way until today, how did your journey go? How did you get to where you are today from university? And I was putting that in there for fun for you.
Thanks very much for that. So as Jeremy is alluding to, I didn't actually go to university. I dropped out very early at school. I think looking back, it took me decades to realize this, but I think back in those days, the way that you were educated, either you were someone who was academic or you were not. And I was easily distracted, and I wasn't an academic person. So I just went straight into working. I was working in bars for the first few years, and I realized that a career as working as a barman was not something I wanted to do for the next 40 odd years. And I was looking through the papers, and I was trying to find the jobs that had the most money as a salary in the job section at the back. And it was, at the time, it was sales. And so I managed to somehow get an interview as a junior sales assistant in a software company. Had no idea what I was doing there, but I kind of cottoned on quickly. So even though I wasn't good at school, I kind of cottoned on to these things pretty rapidly, and really started to enjoy the whole sales process. And back in those days, marketing was, a person that would collect leads at a trade show, put them in a box, and then give them to the sales team to deal with. So I never really knew about marketing It was just like someone did some stuff and gave us some things, you know, in the sales team. But over time, through my career, I hopped between a couple of different jobs and ended up starting up a small software consultancy, and started realizing that there was actually something that happened before someone became a customer. And this whole marketing thing started to explode a lot more for me. And so I guess, you know, over the course of a 10 or 15 year period, I went through sales. I did a bit of software development, set up a small agency, sold that, set up another one, lost that, and then went back into corporate life and started realizing that I really enjoyed understanding why someone would become a customer. You know, what made them want to work with us it's not just because of the product, you know, and I think that was the real advent of some of these really big brands back then as well, where they had very strong brand recognition, where people were starting to attach themselves to a company, not just the product. And I think, you know, I naturally fell into marketing. My first marketing management job, I was heading up a team in sales, and I was complaining about the marketing management, and it wasn't working, wasn't doing what we wanted. And the CEO at the time said to me, he said, "Okay, Adrian, why don't you take on marketing?" I was like, "You know what, I will." And I took it on, and it was kind of a very flippant way of doing it, but I absolutely loved it, because there's this whole discovery mechanism of why people resonated with our brand. And I think over a 5 or 6 year period, I then started realizing that actually there is science behind marketing. It's not just beautiful designs or great big show stands or great articles in magazines. There is actually a logic there. And then, you know, Jeremy and Jan, you're both related to me, unbeknownst until the beginning of this conversation, that I ended up at a company called Axiom, which was a business intelligence organization where we would look and understand how people engaged and work out how we could then leverage that to better engage with them and serve them with content or products that were more relevant to them. And so I think, you know, long story long, my journey is not a normal one. I don't recommend it to anyone, because I was very, very lucky on that path. But at the same time, you know, I think the industries were evolving at the same time, and I managed to get somewhere where now I get the joy of understanding data and how I can use that practically in a marketing sense. And I think that's been a great journey for me.
I like that. Okay, so we'll go Jeff, and then we'll end up with Jan, and we'll go to the next question. But Jeff, you're up.
Sure.
Tell us about your journey.
Sure. I alluded to some of the career evolution when I introduced myself, but, you know, look, I've been all over the place. And you know, Adrian, with all due respect, you have too. And I think that there's a lesson there about the fluidity of careers these days. There was a time when you worried a lot about a gap in a resume, or if you changed jobs every couple of years, you would seem like a person who, you know, wasn't in it to stay. And I think that's all become more fluid, and everyone on this panel is a pretty good example of that. I was an English major, you know, who became an analyst. So some of how that went down is I studied English language and literature at Yale with a focus on Renaissance poetry and drama. So your traditional Shakespeare, Chaucer. What's that?
All about data, right?
Yeah, nothing to do with data. You know, it was your traditional dead white men, Shakespeare, Chaucer, Milton, Spencer kind of education. And I went after that, and I was a freelance journalist for a while. I wrote about music and interviewed bands I loved. That was clearly going next to nowhere. As many people do, I used grad school as a hard reset. I went to business school at Columbia, and that's when I started following my interests. I guess you could argue I always was with the poetry stuff, but you know, at the time it was 2002, and everyone was studying corporate finance. I became attracted to a lesser known discipline that was being offered in the business school around decision optimization and decision modeling. And, you know, I followed that into a career in marketing analytics. I went to Yahoo in the early days when Yahoo had more traffic to search than Google did. I then went to, and this is a story of two losing companies. I was at Yahoo, not Google. And then I was at MySpace pre-Facebook at a time when MySpace had more traffic than Google did also. And so I was basically on a career path in analytics. I ended up joining after spending a couple years in the social gaming space. So I was a consultant to Zynga, then I joined a company called Social Gaming Network. This was during the sort of 2007, 2008 renaissance, after the first internet bubble burst around 2000. Anyway, I was sort of advancing in an analytics career. I joined a company called Beachbody that makes fitness products in 2010. I joined them as their vice president of analytics. Beachbody was a very marketing centric kind of company, and we were optimizing up to $150 million a year in TV infomercial spend. And as we turned the dials more and more on the marketing programs, the marketers would come to me as the head of quant asking for help. And we were at that time growing the business. It grew from being about a $400 million business in 2010 to 1.3, 1.4 billion when I left in 2016, and actually is back in the news because it went public, or announced that it would be going public through a SPAC merger just last week at a $3 billion valuation, which is great for them. But anyway, at a certain point, the founders of Beachbody came to me and said, like, look, we're succeeding because marketing is being done analytically. We've kind of gotten to a point where the marketers won't do much without asking the analysts how to do it anyway. Would you try managing the CRM department? CRM being the function within marketing that markets to customers you've already got, trying to develop their life cycle and grow their lifetime value by getting them to buy more products, to retain longer, and to be effectively cross-sold. That's the discipline within marketing that I would argue has the most signal to be read, because you know the customer, you've got their transactional history, you know their web behaviors if you have a digital environment, and so you can use all that signal to recommend them the right offers at the right time in the right channel. We did well in CRM. We doubled the revenue, and the founder said, "Oh, that was pretty good. Would you try managing another marketing program?" And so over time, I just sort of took on one marketing program, then two, then three, and I was still shocked in 2016 when my phone started ringing and companies were asking me if I wanted to be a CMO. And my first thought was like, that's something I can do. I still thought of myself as a quant. That's what led me into marketing. And, it's at Shutterstock in my first public company CMO role that I tried to approach it with humility and learn from the folks on my team how to do the qualitative side of the business. And so I hired, awesome brand marketers, awesome product marketers, awesome creative directors, and spent 2 years really learning from them, so that when I got to Shopify in early 2018, I felt like, okay, now I know how to put together a marketing program that uses qual and quant. So that's sort of a journey from English to marketing, to quant to marketing, and shows, I hope, that careers can be fairly fluid these days.
The left brain plus the right brain, there you go. So, yep.
Eventually they came together.
Yep. So Jan, let's end up with you on this question. Tell us about your journey.
So mine's a little different. I'm, very old compared to all you guys. So I graduated in 1969 from the College of Science with a degree in applied math and physics from Western University. And there were 4 women in a class of about 300. So for all the women out there who know it's still tough in STEM and in the job market, we've made a lot of progress. And I know sometimes people get tired of talking about back in the day how hard it was, but it was a challenge in terms of diversity in all aspects back then. And I was the top of my class, math in applied math, and just kind of fell into a job, which was a clerical job in the provincial government, which if you're from the US, like a state government or a provincial government statistics office. And statistics in Canada is a federal responsibility. So a provincial statistical agency, even in a province like Ontario, was rather small. And I earned my stripes there, which I always appreciate, because we didn't have any, I was there when we got the first electronic calculator. So when I say I'm old, I'm really old. We had to punch numbers in, pull the crank, get a number, and then enter it in a spreadsheet. In those days was a piece of paper that was this wide. And we had to fill in rows and columns of survey data and share it with the person in our next desk. And the reason why I say that was, it was such an amazing training for me to tell stories with numbers and understand how numbers work and understand, what needs to add up. And I did that for a few years, and eventually I was promoted to head that agency and run all of Ontario's federal provincial negotiations with StatsCan, and go out to people who ran transportation, employment equity, health, education. And my job was to go and on behalf of all those stakeholders and negotiate for data that was going to come into the province from the federal data system. And so then in that role, I learned a lot about stakeholders and data and all the different ways data could be used. Of course, in the meantime, I'm not musical at all, but I love music. So I went to Woodstock. So if you don't know anybody else who went to Woodstock, now you know. And if you don't know what Woodstock was, look it up. But it was a lot of fun. I also was the founder of the Toronto Committee Against Racism and a founder of the Toronto Women's Liberation Movement in 1970 to 72. Almost was arrested demonstrating against the war in Vietnam after the murders at Kent State. So I'm your old radical. I'm your 60s girl. But after working in the government and doing all that work in data for a long time, I was recruited by an Axiom-like company in Canada that was starting to use data and make it available to marketers. And it's called CompuSearch, and it was the first company in Canada to take demographics and put a dot on a map and draw a circle around a retail store and say who lived in the trade area. Of course, that was before we had any desktop computers or GIS, so a lot of stuff was done with some pretty old computers. But I decided overnight to leave my choices. If I was to stay in government, was to go outside of the statistics world and run, some kind of government program or policy thing, which I wasn't the least bit interested in. So then I worked for a private sector company that became a large provider to businesses in Canada, and watched it be sold. First was sold to Polk, and then was sold to Equifax. And then I decided I had a chance to stay there when those big companies took over. But I decided that I really wanted to get back to being much more involved in product. So that's when after a short launch into a big internet company that was supposed to, secure my retirement and turned out to be a disaster, which was a great learning experience, I decided to start this business. So my 3 careers, and so not exactly, moving around, 3 different jobs. People say, how could you go from working for the government to working for a private company, then starting your own business? Because I was kind of a backwards entrepreneur.
It seems like all of us. It actually seems like all of us have done that. When you look at the whole panel.
Yeah, always using math, and I love what people have been talking about the combination of art and science. So the only the end of the story is a month and a half ago, I sold the business to Bell Canada. So they now wholly own the business, but they're operating us as an independent company. I'm still on the board and still the CEO. And we're operating at arm's length from their operating divisions. But Bell Canada wanted to buy the business because they wanted to invest in an infrastructure and a data company for Canada, because they see the need being in the communications business and in the media business for a robust infrastructure for data in Canada. So now I've gone back to working to an organization that's almost as big as the provincial government was when I started.
Interesting.
It's all about using data and helping data solve problems.
There's nothing wrong with that. Let me jump to a different topic. Let me open this up to anybody in the panel, but let's talk about mentors. And I think before everybody jumped on, I also talked about, your mentor is more like your hero, right? This is the person that's kind of I've looked up to. They help guide me through where I'm going. Let's also talk about the villain or the anti-hero, right? So was there somebody in your career, somebody along your journey that was that hero or anti-hero that really said, and I talked about this example before, was there a person that helped guide you with a good light and said, you should do this or you should stop doing this? For example, mine was, I had a guy named Clee Kleber, and he was the CMO / vice president of marketing for Rackspace. And every time I messed up, he used to tell me, here's what you did wrong and here's why. He always told me why, and he explained it in detail, and I never did the same thing wrong twice because of that. And I've always learned how to explain why. I've always learned how to make decisions based on a why, a reason. And he taught me that was the greatest thing I've ever learned. Then I've had some bad managers who I did the opposite of what they did and allowed me to be successful because they were so bad. So let's open up to the panel. Tell me about either a hero or an anti-hero, mentor or detractor in your career.
I don't mind jumping in first.
Go for it.
So I think one that I definitely saw as a hero, he was a great manager generally, but there was one thing that he was saying during one of my one-on-ones with him. It was very early on in my career, so I was very lucky to have him as a manager and a mentor. And it was about, he basically told me that one of the things you need to understand is what is your sweet spot as an individual. This is more about a person in their career rather than purely marketing or analytics. But he taught me that it's really important to know what you think your sweet spot is and enjoy that point. And then when you get to the edges or the peripherals of your sweet spot, you can then make a decision. Is this your new sweet spot, or do you want to come back and stay in a certain area? And I think the reason why I bring this one up is because the idea of us jumping between careers is actually a good thing if you're jumping because you don't feel like you're in your sweet spot anymore. And that was the thing I really enjoyed from him, was that he said, look, and he was head of sales for our company at the time. And he said, look, I'm happy working for a company with 500 employees, X amount of million turnover a year. When it gets bigger than that, I'm too layered and it's too slow and clunky. If it's smaller than that particular size, I feel like I don't have the autonomy or the budgets or the ability to make change. So he knew his sweet spot. And that was one thing I started really hunting out of a career, was trying to find what I thought was my sweet spot. And that's, I'm metronomed between working from large corporates and doing my own thing. And it's doing your own thing is the hard job, but you have the ability to be fluid and creative, and your own restrictions are your own abilities. Whereas working in a corporate, you have obviously typically a lot more structure and control around you, but you have a lot more stability as well. So I guess he was one that I really looked up to as a great manager with some great advice. And just a quick one on the inverse. I worked for a digital agency, and the guy who ran the place was a complete lunatic. It was his way or out the door. And I saw the way that we lost a lot of really great creative people in that organization because he wasn't willing to learn. And one thing I've always tried to be is not, especially in a leadership position, it's very easy to say, no, guys, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way, because you think that you've always got the bigger picture in your mind. But sometimes doing what other people say is the right thing to do. And I think that was one good lesson I learned from him, was that never to be too full of self-belief that you're always the one who's right, especially when everyone else in the room is disagreeing with you. So they were the two mentors that I brought up.
I'll tell you about one of mine. We mentioned before, Bruce Carroll, who was the founder of Claritas and the inventor of the first prism segmentation system for the United States in the 1970s, and then later went on to be an executive at Axiom and many other places. But he was my boss and mentor in the growth period at CompuSearch. And being a mathematician and coming up, working a lot on the product side, it kind of thinking of what Jeff was talking about all the different values that people bring to the table. I was always really frustrated with the salespeople. And in like in a lot of tech organizations, you got the brainy, geeky people who really just think that we understand everything and we're so brilliant. And then there's these, people out there who are hawking the stuff who, really know nothing. And the organization had kind of that tension between the front and the back office. And when Bruce came up from the US and started helping us revamp our business, I'd argue with him, the salespeople are selling stuff we don't have, and you got to get them in line. And one day he said to me, you know what, Jan, nothing happens till somebody writes a check. And I said, what do you mean? He said, how do you think everybody around here gets paid? How would you like to get up in the morning and go out all day, every day, and have customers yell at you and turn you down? And it really sobered me. And I always remember it now when I'm dealing with, we're trying to build one team and we're trying to get people aligned and marching towards the North Star. But I think inside organizations, particularly in tech organizations, bridging the gap between the people. Like some people are left brain, some people are right, and some people are balanced, but not that many people are balanced. And so being able to understand what different people bring to the party, and he taught me that with that one sentence. And sometimes when I'm getting frustrated with the salespeople, can be, you know, pretty creative because we have quotas and we have targets. I always remember nothing happens in business till somebody writes a check. So just remember who does what.
Cool thing. For myself, I can say that one of the biggest mistakes that in my career was not having a mentor. Actually, I was very lucky since the beginning with the success of the business when I launched to surround myself with really great people. So I learned a lot with those people because there were people coming from different places in the industry, and they were attracted by about the vision of the agency and the entrepreneur vision as well. So I managed to gather a lot of information and knowledge from those people. But in retrospect, having this mentor at the beginning, especially for management purposes, it's really important. I'm the guy with the vision that, okay, I see the product going here and we should do this, but managing people is not the best thing that I can do. But you need some minimum skills when you're a CEO to be able, like you said, Jan, to connect the right and the left, and like being this person that vibe manager, not the manager, but the vibe manager of creating the culture necessary to go beyond. So, and one of the guys that I learned a lot from was a strategy guy. It was a German guy that had this huge PhD in mathematics and everything. Was the analytics guy with a very good vision in business. And he wasn't a management guy, but he told me something important is that don't be too good in something that you don't like. So that's for me was really important. So I was trying sometimes, okay, I'm good at that, but do I really love doing that kind of stuff? So it really helped me focusing on what was good and continue with hiring the right people. Like again, I think my best asset in business, it's finding the right talent. So I can sense someone that will fit with the company. And I also made a mistake. That's the billing in the history. When I was starting my second startup, I was like, I didn't have enough time for the agency. So I hired this general manager guy that on paper was incredible in terms of skill set. And when he came to the agency, it was amazing. I mean, new processes, new way of doing things and everything. But day after day, we have this this tool that allows people to give feedback about their happiness level in the agency. So I'm seeing this going down every week. Say, hey, what's going on? Like, you have too much work, or is it something going on? And I found out that this guy wasn't fitting at all. The chemistry wasn't there. He didn't understand the culture. Was good in management, but not good with people. So the relational part that I was bringing to the table wasn't there anymore. So that's for me was a big knowledge and a big opportunity to be not necessarily in the management area, but as a vibe manager, being there for the people and bring the teams to the next level. That's my main objective today.
Good enough. Jeff?
Yeah, you know, like Pablo, I didn't really have a great mentor until later. I do now, but it was probably a decade into my career before I developed really good mentors. And so I have more like an observation or a piece of advice than an anecdote, which is, yes, it's best if a mentorship relationship develops organically. And if you're spending time with a leader or a boss and that evolves, I think that's great. But it's also all right to seek out mentorship. You know, having been on the other end of not having a great mentor early in my career, I try to bend over backwards with more junior folks and help them. But I've also had folks come to me and say like, hey, would it be all right if I checked in with you like once every couple weeks or once a month and got some advice? And, you know, I know what they're asking for. And you know, the point I'm making is that you could even broaden it beyond this idea of asking people to be a mentor and say that in business, you sort of have to call your shots and advocate for yourself and say what you want, you know, because if you're not looking out for yourself, whether it's seeking a mentorship or seeking a promotion or something like that, it's not necessarily the case that someone else is going to do it for you. And so I would just say that being explicit and approaching someone, they'll usually be flattered anyway. And so it's important to develop mentorship early. I didn't do it, but I wish I had been more forward in seeking it.
I agree. So let me ask. I was talking to you guys about this earlier about, making that leap to start your own company. I want to ask a variation of that because I think this would actually be a little bit more interesting. Tell me about either an emotional confidence or a skill set that you feel that you need to have, that you felt you had to have in order to make that leap. Because you know what I mean? It's one of those to where, a lot of times if you're up and coming and you're trying to figure out, do I make that big leap from this company to the next? I know Pablo, you talked about, hey, they were paying us they're going to pay a ton of money. That was a reason why. A lot of times when you make those big jumps from one company to the next, you decide, you know what, screw this, I'm going to go start my own company. Was it this emotional feeling that you had of just pure and utter confidence, like you could not fail? Or was there that vulnerability of I am ready to fail? Or was it that I've earned this skill set and I'm so confident in the skill set that I've got this? Pablo, you want to go first? Yeah, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's a mix of a lot of things, but my level of confidence when I launched the business, or saying that, okay, my contract is ended with this company, now I'm gonna do something on my own. It was my level of confidence was never that high in my whole life. It was just crazy. Like it wasn't a mission. Like it was destiny. Like it's almost religious. Like there was something that is going to happen here, and I'm pretty sure that good things are coming. So I was extremely focused on that, but I also knew that I had a set of skills that were very important. The main skill that still is really useful for me today, and it's something really simple. It's I understand and I know how to work with the media, for example. If I want to do, for example, a Facebook campaign or a Google AdWords campaign, I can do it myself. And I'm not doing that anymore for the company, but it was extremely important because I knew that when I launched the agency at that time, that skill set was very rare and uncommon. Like to have a professional understanding of the marketing side, the technology side, the media side, and be responsible with spending money of other people. Like it's being like a shareholder. You're trusting that this person will invest your money in the right way. With marketing dollars is exactly the same way. So I knew that I'd had that vision to find the right spots, where to invest, and the marketing approach. So for me, it wasn't again something that hey, if it fails, I don't care. Honestly, I didn't have any other source of income, so maybe it was denial, but it worked. So it's a combination of faith, and I would say, and trust in my skill sets to get clients to the next level, and it happened basically.
But your level of confidence was always there, because I know we got a question in there that talked about if you ever felt imposter syndrome, that idea that you're falsely.
A lot of times, but what I know is that when you get the imposter syndrome, it's because you're actually learning something. You're learning something, and you're processing the information. So for me, it wasn't. I found a way to tame that imposter syndrome and to tell myself, this is not bad. It's because you're learning something, and there's a challenge here. This is good. We're going in something new. It's innovation, and innovation always paid off for me. So for me, it's not something bad. Having the imposter syndrome, it's actually a sign, an indicator that there's maybe something interesting here. Dig more.
I like it. Cool. Anybody else? Adrian, Jan, or Jeff?
I'll throw in one thought on, as it pertains to the question of confidence and imposter syndrome. I would just a piece of advice. I would never wait until you're 100% confident to do something. It's a recipe for never trying anything. When you think, someone posted a question in the channel and said something like, have you ever felt imposter syndrome? I feel like all my success has been luck. turn the lens on someone else and ask, where isn't luck involved, or who knows something that you don't know, and look at it with an unbiased eye. Because, I think about when I took my first CMO role, I said, well, I'm secretly just an analyst who was asked to watch a couple marketing departments, and, what do I know about marketing? There were things that worked well. There were things that didn't work well. More often than not, if people fail, they learn something. As often as not, if people fail, they fail up. Having had a job, you might get a better job. There are studies that say people regret much more not taking an opportunity than they regret taking an opportunity that didn't work out. Because you'll always wonder what could have been. And so just, no one's ever 100% confident. If they are, that's a rarity. Take your shots, and what's the worst that can happen is kind of my view.
Jan?
Yeah, I would just jump in on that to say, I think, first of all, for me, deciding to leave a corporate job where I was, a president, but with no ownership, and to start a business from scratch, competing with my old business. So I never really questioned. I knew that this was something that the customers really needed and that other people were screwing up. But the thing that was the most important is it's not going to be easy, and you have to do whatever it takes. And you are going to make decisions. But when you're at a crossroads and you make a decision, it's not like they're hugely right or wrong. You learn from your mistakes, and you got to shake it off. So to me, the key factor is resilience. Like, I don't know about anybody else, but I doubt anybody's path was exactly smooth. I remember being in the grocery store pleading with the banker to please cover the payroll because a wire was on the way, and really just doing whatever it takes, and knowing that you're doing the best you can. And so I think the cure to am I really qualified? No, you're not. Because even if you knew everything about everything, things in the outside world are going to change. But you just put one foot in front of the other, and no regrets. Like, when you come to a fork in the road, it's not like there's one right path and one wrong path. It's just you take one and you learn from your mistakes and pick yourself up and keep going. And if you're surrounded by good people and you have a good product and good customers, it's not a straight line, but it works out.
Sounds like a pattern with this group, unless Adrian's going to kill this pattern.
Yeah, no, you're wrong. No. Honestly, I think from day one, I suffered from imposter syndrome because I was a kid working in a bar with no qualifications, trying to flag a job as a sales guy. But what I do think imposter syndrome is a really good symptom of is self-awareness, and that if you're questioning yourself, then most people, 99% of the time, will then react positively to that questioning. They'll go, damn, am I going to know my line? It's like am I going to know my lines for the show tomorrow? I better reread my lines. People positively react when they question themselves. It's a little bit uncomfortable for sure when you question yourself, but that's a good thing, because I think, as Pablo said, as everyone said, one, you're kind of pushing your own personal boundaries. Well, that's a good thing for personal development. But if you feel like you're an imposter, then it means that you're going to probably make sure that you carry on, that you're not the imposter, that you are the right person. And it's actually good to be I always like to say, I like being the least educated person in my company, because it means I've surrounded myself by really clever people that can do the right thing. I can guide the ship roughly in the right direction, but having the clever people, that's what's going to make me successful and my company successful. So it's good to be the imposter. And I like sitting in a room listening to my guys going, I've got no idea of half the stuff you're talking about, but if it does what I think it's going to do, then it's a good thing. So it's okay. I definitely think it's an okay thing to feel like an imposter.
So here's a variation. This is not something we were talking about before, but a variation for the panel too. If somebody's listening to this and say, well, I've got this great idea, I'm confident, I have the skill sets, I have the left brain and the right brain, I'm ready to go, and you want to start your own business, do you start this by yourself? Because I know a few of you have, or do you try to find a team? Is it the Ocean's 11 version, or is it, I'm going to go and do Mission Impossible, or, what am I going to do?
That's an interesting question. I think
you can say
both.
It's okay to say both.
Yeah, well, I think it's very, I don't want to do the cop out, but I think it depends. It depends on the people that you talk, because when you start bouncing your idea around, when you feel confident enough to actually talk about it publicly, when you're drunk with your friends, when you actually end up finding people that could potentially be co-founders with you, you really need to then work out, well, are they the right co-founder? The biggest mistake you'll ever make is the mistake I made with my first startup, which was I brought on my best friend as my co-founder. Well, yeah, see all the heads, right? So it's always going to, no, 99% of the time it's going to go wrong. And it did. Eventually it went wrong. But so you have to find the right co-founder. The luxury of having co-founders is that you're a Swiss Army knife. You have other facets and skills around you. And that's the other thing. You don't want your co-founder to be a mirror image of you. It's like getting a good life partner. You need someone who complements, but also conflicts enough to push your boundaries. So that's the upside. The downside is exactly the same thing. You've got someone conflicting with you and pushing your boundaries when you feel like you need to be focused. So if you feel comfortable that you have the ability to lead and drive your own concept or your own business yourself, and you're driven in that way for whatever reason, then doing it yourself will work. If you find the right business partner that complements your skill sets and adds value to the goal of the mission, and they understand the mission as well, then that's going to work too. So my cop-out answer is both. It's down to the individual scenario.
Perfect answer. Well, to me, yeah. Anybody else in the panel?
I mean, for me, first of all, I hope I didn't suggest, because I was the founder, but I brought founding partners in. So the first, I found the best product person, the best salesperson, and the best tech platform person I could. And they were people that I had worked with before that were passionate about the business. And I would say we're all close, but we weren't exactly the best personal friends. And then I found an equity partner, like an angel equity partner, because for the kind of business we started, we had a good amount, a year's worth of data and software development before we could collect a dime. And so great financial partner, arm's length. And I gave half of my equity to 6 people right from the very beginning. And, we were all aligned around common purpose, and we all worked very hard, in very early days. There was a lot of sweat equity in it. And some people said, you're crazy. Why'd you give, all those guys that? And never a moment of regret, because we became a team and we aligned around that North Star to make it happen. So I definitely didn't do it alone.
I agree with you, dude. It was the same for me. Jeff, coming from the equity side, what's your thought on that? So maybe we could even be partnering with an equity group.
Sorry, I missed the last thing you said about relating it to equity. Say that one more time.
So I mean, from Jan's example, she talked about, hey, I brought in some friends, but I knew they were experts in the industry, experts in their various fields. But she also had a strong equity partner, a strong financial partner that came in, and based on Adrian's example and some of the ones we talked about, it's, do you start up a company with co-founders? Do you try to do this yourself? And maybe that co-founder could be an equity partner where they install management.
Right.
I don't know. And like I said, this is your field.
Yeah, no, I caught the broader topic.
Yeah.
Look, I think the professional investor answer would be something like, you want to retain as much equity as you can, assuming you can create, the same, work quality and dedication through some other means of compensation or incentive. Certainly the very richest entrepreneurs I knew are the ones who bootstrapped as long as they could and raised money only, at the very last moment when they needed to. But I think Jan makes a really good point. Not everyone is motivated only by being as wealthy as they possibly can. It may be a much longer path if you want to do everything in a bootstrapped way and cut no one else in. And so there are a lot of ways to get there. And I think that there is some comfort in being in the journey with other people who are, similarly incentivized and motivated. So, but if you do bring in partners, make damn sure they're the right people and that, you're aligned in terms of the level of investment you're each going to put in of your time and of yourself, and that they complement you tremendously, because there's, duplicative skill sets and knowledge is not something you probably want to spend equity on. So, I think the short answer is there's lots of different ways to do it. But if you do give away equity, I would say, understand what it could be worth and make sure you're giving it to the right people for the right reasons.
Very cool. And Pablo,
sorry, Jeremy, for me at the year, I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It was a very small, it was like angel money just to, keep the lights on for a year. So there was a lot of bootstrapping that went on, but it was and so shared equity with the finance guy, but it was really the other key founders, as somebody said, like, get the skills that you don't have. For me, it was get the skills you don't have. Trying to get the second round was a lot harder. So.
Yeah. Very cool. Pablo, do you got one, or do you want me to jump to the next part?
Actually, I second Adrian. For me, I started alone, and during on the road, I added a single partner, and that partner exited a couple of years ago. Very good relationship, but it's always what the person can bring to the table, and in terms of skill set, in terms of vision, in terms of business. But I always maintain control on the business and the vision, and that was okay for my added partner from day one. He didn't want that aspect. So having the clear roles of everyone and what is doing what, it's key for succeeding. That's my experience on that.
I like that. That's good. So let's jump over to something different. Let's talk about the pandemic. Right? We're not going to talk about vaccines. We're not going to talk about who got COVID. I actually had COVID. It's not fun. We could talk about that later. But let's talk about the pandemic and forced digital transformation. So I'll put my Adobe hat on real fast as an advisor at Adobe. One of the things we always talk about is the idea that you're bringing together art and science, you're bringing together content and data. And with that, you understand that people don't buy products anymore, they buy experiences, right? They buy that customer experience. And what I think the pandemic has done is force this idea of digital transformation, or no matter however you define it, right? But it's forced digital transformation with companies to where they understand now that these customers are no longer going into a brick and mortar store and buying stuff, but their experience has changed and the way they purchase and the way they do business. Everybody on this panel is involved somehow in either data, analytics, or marketing. And I'd like to understand from your perspective, and let's not do like 10-minute rants, because I know I could go off for about 10 minutes to an hour on one topic of this, because it's something, it's part of my jam. But let's talk about each one of you. How has the pandemic forced digital transformation across the businesses that you work with? And how have you benefited from that, being in data and analytics? And let's go ahead and start back again. Adrian, let's go with you first, and then we'll jump to Jan, Jeff, and then Pablo.
Cool. I hate to steal, I think, Jeff, from some of your past experience as well at Shopify. One of the things I've seen the biggest impact for the people that we work with is local retail or small retail. They were going through a slow digital transformation over the last decade, right? Because people wanted to have the ability to buy online, or at least look at their company, their retailer online that's around the corner. And then the likes of Amazon got stronger and stronger, and people started getting to realize that their competition wasn't a similar shop to theirs in the next town, but someone on the other side of the planet with a huge warehouse. And I think what we've now seen with the pandemic is that's accelerated it, because it's not only has more people come online just because of the nature of people coming online, but less people are physically going into the stores, or they're not able to go into the stores, or the stores are shut. And so they've had to do this transformation into the online world. And one of the things for my business is that our goal is to enable businesses to better understand the data that's being generated. It's very easy to generate a lot of data and do a lot of stuff, but to turn that into business value and what you can do with it to improve your company is a harder thing. And so what we now see is that we're seeing a lot of these companies, small businesses and primarily retail, that are going online, doing online advertising, boosting posts, whatever it may be, but they don't actually necessarily know if it's adding truly real value to their business. It's not joined up to their CRM. They're not seeing necessarily that this click has turned into this conversion or this deal. So that's one of the biggest things I've seen, is that it's not only accelerated the need for being more digital for small businesses, but I think it's also starting to broaden the gap of understanding as well as being able to execute. And I think that's a big problem that we're going to see over the next few years.
I like that. Cool. Let's see who is next. Jeff, right? And then Pablo, or sorry. Actually, it was Jeff, Jan, then Pablo. So Jeff, you're up.
Sure. You didn't steal my thunder. The pandemic impact, obviously, as you say, Jeremy, you can talk about that for a long time. People don't realize how much commerce still happens offline. I think about the e-commerce impact. Pre-pandemic, 89% of commerce was still happening offline. During COVID, that dropped to 84%. So I always think about the massive secular shift that is going to continue to happen to online commerce. I don't care if you think the terminal number is 70%, 60%, or 20%, only 16% of commerce, and that's in a period of stay-at-home orders, is happening online. So just something to think about. I have an interesting, lens into the pandemic impact on digital transformation, because when you work for a private equity fund, you may have 100 companies, as we do across your portfolios. And so I've seen a lot of businesses that, as someone else said, are sort of on a slow digital transformation journey. I'm talking about restaurant chains here, club-based gyms, have to really fast accelerate what was meant to be kind of a half-assed multi-year roadmap. And I've been put into these companies to help some of them succeed. And one of the things that's really struck me is the notion, again, I can't remember who said it, but I think you said it, Jeremy, that experiences really come first. These days, a lot of companies going through a digital transformation are still thinking about the digital experience as like an IT situation. We're going to put in an ERP system, and they think about a checklist of attributes, must be able to download a workout, or, that's not what leads to surprise and delight. Yeah, it's not what leads to surprise and delight in the customers. And so I found myself in the position of explaining to legacy analog companies that want to go through a digital transformation what the role of product is in real tech companies. And in every company that I've been in that's a true tech company, product is sort of front and center, because that is the design of the user experience. But coming to think of digital product not as IT and more as UX, and putting that front and center is something that a lot of companies that want to digitally transform need to go through as a mind shift.
I like that. Jan, you're up.
So I'll talk about a little bit of a different thing. I mean, everybody's identified that a lot of the work that people were doing to go digital and move in a different direction definitely got accelerated. And we saw that from a lot of our customers who really did a good job of some fast transformation. But we also saw data really being used in many different ways. So we're in the sort of geolocation business, and we had been working for about a year on evaluating. I mentioned before, if you're tracking people around on their cell phones, and there's 20 companies in the US who do it, probably 100, and they create permissioned location data, and aggregators compile it from apps, and people start to use it for marketing intelligence, who drove by the Costco to go to the Walmart and so on. And so one of the things that happened to us as a company was, first of all, we have heavy number of customers in retail and in tourism. So immediately, we had big gap in revenue, and we had to make a decision about whether we were going to let people go or not. So one of the things we did was we did what I think was projected to be about 3 months of we did what we had projected to be about 12 months of product development on making those mobile movement data more representative, weighting them to population, understanding that you're not your phone, but that from your phone, we can make some guesses about who you are as a consumer. And we did a big piece of work, and we stood up Snowflake, experimented in the cloud, built new algorithms to do the data differently. And then we also knew that we needed to know when people were inside what the industry calls geofences. And so we evaluated all of the public source and commercial products that were available. And some of them are pretty good for the US, but most of them weren't very good for Canada. The reason being that Canada is such a small market that people don't invest much. So we said to our staff, if we put 3 shifts on and everybody works nights and weekends, can we not only advance the development of the data and the technology, but can we do the grunt work of defining the polygons for restaurants, gyms, grocery stores, parks, subway stations for the whole country? And in 2.5 months, we did accurate rosters and polygon creation of 10,000 places in Canada. Sorry, 100,000 places in Canada that can now be used to track consumer behavior. And the story for me was our customers were so excited about it. Our customers who would have otherwise held our feet to the fire to get the list of grocery stores in Moncton, or who would have otherwise paid us for stuff, or partners who said, oh yeah, we'll extend your licenses. So we're down revenue. We were trying to keep people employed. And for me, it was a great kind of business story for us. We built a product much faster, and we built a product that we probably wouldn't have otherwise ever had the luxury to build. But the thing that happened to me was about community, was other suppliers and clients telling us what to do and people testing things, so that we could really think right from the beginning of the business crisis, what is it going to take to come out the other side? And that was our personal story, but I saw so much of that in the business community of suppliers getting together. And I feel there's been a bit of a transformation. Customers are, especially in the next 6 months and 12 months, they're still going to be very challenged, and they expect us on the tech and the data and the analytics side to help them navigate. It's so hard if you're a medium-sized business to know what a BI firm does and what a data firm does, and buying the software and understanding ad tech. So what I've seen is a lot of movement towards our industry, everybody on this call, other people in the data, in trying to figure out how to be more of service, and this concentration after the social unrest in the US and how it impacted Canada, this concentration on understanding what your mission are and what you care about. These were things that came out for a lot of individuals in COVID, but I think it came out for business in a good way as well. And I think it helps us learn how to kind of transform the business community to be, of course, the old idea that if you do good work and you try to build a better civil society, that you can't make money. I think we have now come out the other side of people knowing that it's not just social responsibility of who you donate to, it's business can actually be functional and give back and make money and provide something back to community. And it's not perfect, but I did see some shifts in that in the past 12 months that were really gratifying.
That's interesting. Pablo?
Yeah, for us was very simple. Actually, we work with a lot of businesses that target the businesses, so B2B. So at the beginning of the pandemic, it was just crazy because there was a lot of requests, to better understand marketing opportunities for them, digital marketing opportunities. So from the day to the other, businesses that normally will never invest a dime in social media, in, for example, Google AdWords, programmatic and stuff like that, suddenly they became super interested. So we started to develop a lot of programs called B2E programs, so business to employee. So it's I don't like the name, but it's called social selling basically, and it's using your workforce, your employees, as brand ambassadors, people that can actually talk about the company, be expert advisors. A lot of activity actually on LinkedIn about this. It was very important for them to have a way to building those kind of programs. And one of the reasons that we work with businesses that normally they have salespeople, for example, or representatives, and there's no more trade shows. They're not allowed to work, to travel anymore. So they're staying at home and they're trying to do some kind of connections, and just connecting with someone on LinkedIn is not enough. So we came up with different ideas with content, segment, automation tools, and like processes to take the most of the employees and support the company in terms of visibility and potential lead acquisition as well. So we started with one company at the beginning of the pandemic, and now I would say that we have around 10 companies, and like large companies with 100,000 of employees actually starting with this program. So we're very happy about that. So employee potential has been key during this pandemic. Like, what can you bring and help at the end of the day?
I like that. So let's shift gears to something a little bit more futuristic, and then we'll close up today's session with a word of advice from each of our panel members. But let's talk about the next 5 years. Let's talk about, and this is a hard one because this can also go on to a 30-minute rant. So let's try to keep this one to something kind of short and sweet, something tangible. But where do we see data analytics and marketing? Where do we see this going, the trend? Because I mean, I'm looking back to where going to the MarTech conferences, going from, Dreamforce to the digital summits, going to all the different conferences in the US. I remember back in the day, it was all about, 360-degree view. That was the buzzword. And then it was about omni-channel experience. And everybody was saying they had an omni-channel experience, but it was BS, right? And then they started talking about AI. And that's when I was working at IBM. And I remember then Salesforce came out with their own AI and their own machine learning tool. And that was the big trend. And then it changed to something else. So what's the next big trend over the next 5 years? Where do you guys see this going? Whoever wants to go first.
I might as well jump in. I always go first. I like it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you my skewed version because it's why I'm doing my business. And I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think there is a big gap between the ability to get data and spend money on actionable data against actually understanding it. And one of the marketing campaigns we did recently to try and articulate what we do is we liken our dashboards, our reporting dashboards, to that of a car dashboard. As a driver, you want a light to light up to tell you the brakes need changing or you need more gas in the tank. The mechanic, the clever person, the technical person, they can work under the hood and do all the magic stuff if the business person or the driver just says, oh, I've got a brake light on. And I think there's going to be an evolution of that mechanism of the highly skilled, talented, technical marketers, as I like to call them, versus the business person who's driving the ship. At the moment, big companies, I think, have that or have been working on that for a long time. But there's a mass of small, medium businesses that want to do the same thing, understanding where their marketing dollars most effective, what's it bringing to the business. If we put more in, is it going to do more for us? Every business wants and needs to know that. And it's really hard for small businesses to really get that view without using or hiring, lots of agencies or hiring lots of employees to do that for them. I think there's going to be this need to tie up both ends. And it's not to say that there's Pablo, it's not to say there's a removal of agencies, because there's always going to be the need for the talent not to be in your company. There's no need to hire a person that does everything. But I think the understanding piece, the clarity, the simplicity of the value that the data that's being generated through marketing activities is going to be something that has to be improved on over the next few years.
Like it.
I agree 100%. And for me, for example, for the agency, what we're seeing is that we're increasing our revenues without increasing the number of people working at the agency. So the fact of the talent thing is extremely important. We have people that can have a vision for a company, especially for digital transformation in marketing. And we used to have a lot of campaign managers. So now we have less campaign managers, but we have automation specialists. And I think there's something on the chat that says that, okay, in the future, there's going to be one-click campaign and everything. I'm pretty sure that it's getting way easier than it used to be to launch a campaign. You don't need, for example, to have multiple teams that are creating ad variations. That's something that can be done automatically nowadays, and it's going to be way more in the future. But that is interesting because I think that you can target a lot of people. You can target the right demographic at the right time. But at the end of the day, you need the message. You need a crafted message that will convert with that person that will engage. And we're not there yet in terms of automation for creativity or understanding that the how to create an emotion to the person with a connection. Probably we're gonna get there one day, and I'm not saying like in 30 years, but it may be in 5, 6, 10 years or something like that. But for the moment, it's a combination of content with marketing, with data, and everything. That's the mix that we are experts in working with. So I'm pretty sure that automation will be extremely important, but with great challenges, especially with privacy concerns that are coming. So we don't know what's going to happen with that as well.
I'll jump in with a view that may seem backwards, but marketing is headed in a very quantitative direction, and I've been a beneficiary of that as an analyst who became an accidental CMO. I actually think that there's going to be a recognition that you can't forget the fundamentals. I'm starting to see more and more articles, like one I read in, I can't remember which one it was in, but in a marketing journal, where Adidas came out and said, all this performance marketing stuff is great, but we pursued efficiency at the expense of efficacy. And by only doing very, very bottom funnel activities, meaning seeking signs of digital intent to buy something and harvesting it effectively, we stopped creating new interest and new customers. And that they had overswung the pendulum towards digital marketing channels being measured on efficiency and not efficacy measures. And they ended up moving back up the funnel to do out-of-home advertising and back to TV advertising. And I think people are going to realize that there are limitations of the new ways of doing things and that you can't forget the fundamentals. The other place where I'm a little bit, backwards perhaps, is as you say, Jeremy, I've heard a lot about AI and ML, and there are certainly applications for it. I am not of the belief that within a couple years, everything's just going to be run off AI and ML. I just haven't seen, you go into a room with 100 marketers and say, like, how many of you are successfully using, AI at scale? And I don't see many hands go up. And so I think there are specialized use cases. I've succeeded with methods like that when I've had data scientists in-house on my team, specifically modeling my business, which they understood. I have not had success with black box algorithms where it's like, oh, just use our software. We'll ingest all your data and figure it out. And then we're going to decide the customer experience. Those are never bespoke to your business. They are, a general model that may work for some and not for others. And in my experience, they still mistake very basic correlations. Like the best customers are the ones who buy X. Well, it could be X was advertised more on weekends and weekend buyers take more upsells. I've seen all sorts of simple correlations being missed because the algorithm by definition cannot understand how your business works or any idiosyncrasies of how you've chosen to run it. So, I'm just a little bit more, yes, there's a role for this stuff, but I'm not one of those people who says, oh, within a few years, like we'll just hit play and, AI will run all our marketing departments. The role for human judgment is still so profound.
Skynet? Are you talking about Skynet? I don't know, but
Skynet's coming. and if I just can add something about what Jeff was saying, is that with automation, you have a lot of people doing exactly the same thing. So like you said, the lower funnels is like, it's going to be extremely crowded. So you need to work on different things. You need to work on awareness, the brand, the values, the experience, everything around the brand, which is going to be extremely important, not just the lower funnel conversions.
So I agree with Jeff. I almost don't want to talk because it just sounds like we're saying the same thing, but I do want to mention a couple of things, and that is marketing is fundamentally trying to understand, for different subgroups of the population, what's the product offer, what's the motivation, what's the message, what's the medium, what at the right time. And all this technology is great, and it really is. I'm not a Luddite, but the fundamentals of marketing are the same. And I saw, going from brand and then going to, CRM and then going to digital. And, the problem with a lot of business and what happens is we throw the baby out with the bathwater. And one of the things we saw in the pandemic that was most, like you saw the return of TV. I mean, as you say, there's still a very large amount of money being spent in other places other than online. But most people, you know, seem to forget about that. The journals, everybody's writing about digital in the future. The truth is, we do have to go back to basics. There's many companies who still, you know, can't even manage their customer data to see who's buying what. And there's a lot of work to be done to make sure that you understand your customer, and that, you know, just because digital is cheap, if you're using display and mobile targeting and outdoor ads, and you're overusing it, you're going to get the backlash, and you're going to get the consumer resistance. And so basic fundamentals of really, how do you drive people to stores or to sites, and how do you help understand the right moment in time for people to make that decision, has to come back to basics. And we're supposed to be a tool to help with that. We're not supposed to be the thing in itself.
I like that. I like that. So let's do this. And as we're coming up to the end of the session, let me give everybody their final sign off. This is not like debate time, right? You got your last thing to say here. We're going to go in order of Adrian, Pablo, Jeff, then Jan, and then I'll give a little spiel too. But what advice do you have for any listeners as they continue to build their journeys and their career paths? Like, what is the best advice you could give them? It's a tough one, and this advice could be around, you know, maybe a statement of saying, you know, is trust your heart, go with your instinct. You know,
I definitely, yeah. I mean, I think that's a good lesson of life, full stop, right? Which is, if your gut or your heart's telling you something, you should at least give it a little bit of airtime to work out, you know, is that coming across for a particular reason? I think, you know, it comes back to the lessons that I got very early on about trying to find out what my sweet spot is, not knowing what my sweet spot was, but trying to work out what that was, and not necessarily having to feel that you have to find your career straight away and stick to it and be done with it. You know, people now have, I think they say you can have like 3 full careers now before you retire, whereas before it was 1. And I think it's down to age and everything else that kind of that's impacted that. So I think that, you know, really explore what you want to do and give different things an opportunity. I think marketing and data are going to be a marriage that's going to last for a long time. It's not going to be a happy marriage, but it's going to be a marriage that's going to have a lot of codependencies and a lot of success over time. So if you're involved in those areas, I think that's something that's, you know, or you want to get involved in those areas. I think that's an area of business which I don't know how long it will be until we're beyond just the tip of the iceberg of that. There's so much more that we don't know that's what's going to happen in those areas. So I think it's a super exciting area to be part of. So enjoy it, explore, listen, learn, all the usual facts of life. I think are things that you need to consider as you know, for your journeys.
For me, it's it may sound a bit cheesy, but a curiosity. It's being curious. It's extremely important. I receive a lot of CVs for different job positions that we have actually open right now. And when I meet people, I asking them, where do you get your information? Or what's going on with it? What do you think of this and that? And there's a lot of people not, for example, everyone is following the same brands. Everyone following the same influencers and everything. So everyone gets the same message. I need people that can think sometimes differently. So go get information in different places, read different books, and find a different combinator to what you're already learned. So if you're very good with numbers, maybe start understanding the correlation with numbers and human behavior and stuff like that. That's combining this stuff. It's going to be extremely important for me and for the next hires that we have. We need to have this level of curiosity and openness of information and knowledge coming from different sources and not just an Instagram feed, for example. My 2 cents.
I like it. Jeff, you're up.
Yeah, I think I was next. It's hard to give just one piece of advice. I'll throw in a couple of quick things, some of which have come up along the way. You know, one is we've talked a little bit about imposter syndrome and failure. You know, Very few decisions are completely undoable and forever. So, you know, especially like if you're a McGill student right now, you've probably succeeded a lot along the way. People can be paralyzed by fear of failure. And I would just say, like, you're almost always better off for taking the risk if you're not 100% sure. I said this earlier, but I'll say it again, advocate for yourself. It sounds like such a simple thing, but I would have people leave a department that I was managing. And I said, well, why did you leave? Oh, well, you know, I'm going to this other company and they're giving me this other discipline that I can also manage. You know, you know, and I'd say, well, you know, then I had no idea you had that aspiration, you know, and so just letting people, so even something really simple, like letting your boss know that you aspire to do something additional or to get a promotion. If you don't sort of call that shot and advocate for yourself, no one else really will. And then I would say, like, it's worked out well for me to sort of follow interests and passions. This is related to Pablo's point about curiosity. I related that, you know, at a time when everyone was studying corporate finance because the dot-com bubble had burst in 2001, that I started studying decision modeling in grad school. And, you know, luck of the draw, analytics became a thing. But the point is, no one can know what's going to fall in or out of favor. And if you do something you're genuinely interested in, as often as not, it'll work out, even if it doesn't seem like it's the thing at that moment. So that worked out well for me.
So for me, it's kind of the same thing. It's do what you love. When you stop loving it, find out what makes you happy and what makes you curious, and pursue it. Keep the journey. You know, the people who are happy and successful are people who are really growing. And if you feel like you're starting to stagnate, then do something different and do the work to figure out what it is. Also, second point is, I think really we need to get more active listening going on in our relationships and in our business world. So because there's so much jargon and there's so many people who think, well, we just do this and we just do that. And when a group of people sit around and to solve a problem, and really, I think somebody else said it, you know, if you're the boss, you might have a lot of good ideas, but the 6 people in the room probably collectively together are going to have better ones most of the time. So be a part of a team and listen to what they have to say. And then you'll be really, it'll strengthen your own personal opportunities as you move through your career.
I completely agree. And I think for my last point too, I've tried the solo effort and I've crashed and burned miserably, where I wore too many hats and I thought I could do it myself because I wanted the equity for myself. And I learned, you know, based on what everybody else said, don't do it yourself. Find really good people that complement you and build a team around it based on that. And I've always thought that it was all about innovation, being able to innovate yourself and try new things. And I have a formula for innovation. And that formula is based on 2 concepts. Innovation is the addition of chaos and diversity. If you're able to build a diverse group of people, and that diversity could be diversity in skill set, age, demographic, moral, ethical values, anything that you can have that brings you into a business that makes you different, right? Whatever that fundamental is, that diversity helps you create part of that change. The second thing is chaos, and chaos is the concept of being able to push your ideas against one another, but in a good way, to be able to challenge the status quo, challenge we've always done it this way, and challenge, you know, assumptions. And then from that, having that chaos and diversity together to drive innovation, that's what's allowed me to be able to grow and succeed and find my way forward. Without that, I would have been stagnant, and I wouldn't have tried new things, and I wouldn't have challenged myself. The last thing I would say about that is, you know, like I said, it's all about that passion and skill set, right? If you have the passion for it and you have the skill set, try it. You know, if it's a smart choice, I'm not saying go sell your house and move to whatever and become broke, and then, you know, you're broke. But you know what I'm talking about, right? It's all about trying to follow your passion and trying to do good things and you know, go with your gut. So with that, this has been absolutely fantastic. We will be posting this all, I believe, Tim will be posting this through your network, but also this will be shared across the different networks of each of the different panel members. And thank you very much, everybody. This has been absolutely great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Cool.
Nice to
Thanks,
meet
guys.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.